Welcome to the Five Towns Jewish Times podcast, bringing you the latest stories, insights, and conversations that matter most to you and your community. Here is your host, Larry Gordon.
Okay, hi everyone. Larry Gordon here from the offices of the Five Towns Jewish Times, and our second guest on this week's podcast is an old friend, Rabbi Marc Schneier of the illustrious and outstanding Hamptons Synagogue in West Hampton, New York, and one of the founders, or the founder of the Foundation of Ethnic Understanding. A man who not only a leader of the American Rabbinate, but from my personal observation, has really gone the extra extra mile, I should say, in constructing, building relationships between Jews and Muslims around the world. And I would guess you're probably doing that, I guess, 25 years or more, Rabbi?
It's been over 20 years. The foundation
Oh, yeah,
I established back in 1989. The first
yeah.
15 years, we
Mhm,
focused primarily on restoring the historic alliance between
mhm,
blacks and Jews in our country. And then about 20 years ago, Larry, we pivoted to Muslim Jewish
mhm.
relations globally that I thought was one of the great interreligious challenges of our generation, to find the path to narrow the gap, the chasm, the divide between 16 million Jews and 1.8 billion Muslims.
So, and you would have no idea what it was going to lead up to in terms of New York City and the very prominent role you've kind of almost like been drafted into serving, especially over the last week with the election of Zoran Mamdani to be mayor of New York City. And your father, of course, the very prominent and leading distinguished American rabbi, Rabbi Arthur Schneier at the Hamptons Synagogue. We've had these Nefesh B'Nefesh shows, so to speak, out here in the Five Towns, and there's been, protests for a Palestinian flag, protests. Police kept them across the street. They were yelling, but it didn't make international news, so it wasn't such a big deal. But it became a major event there in Midtown Manhattan last week.
Well, clearly, the mayor-elect reached out to me on Friday morning, knowing of my being at the forefront of building Muslim-Jewish relations globally. And we spoke on Friday morning, late Friday morning, 11:45. He was on his way to meet President Trump in Washington.
Hmm.
And he expressed to me his condemnation of what took place at the protest in front of my father's synagogue. But I immediately um, spoke out against his condemnation. I said, as far as I'm concerned, it's half-baked. I didn't appreciate the caveats he had thrown into his condemnation when he attacked the synagogue for, I quote, their misuse of sacred space. That nefesh b'nefesh is a violation of international law. I said to the mayor-elect that is highly offensive, highly insensitive to the Jewish community. And then I segued into reminding him that not only is he out of touch with the Jewish community, he's out of touch today with the greater Muslim world.
Hmm.
And I'm probably one of the few, if not the only one, that can say this because of my relationships, because of my engagement with the leaders of the Arab and the Muslim majority nations. I cited Saudi Arabia, I cited Indonesia, Azerbaijan, UAE, Bahrain, you name it, that support a two-state solution. They may champion a Palestinian state, but never at the expense of the Jewish state of Israel. And here we have a mayor-elect who refuses to recognize the state of Israel's existence as a Jewish state. And I made very clear, I even invited the mayor-elect, come on a journey with me. I'll take you to all of these Arab and Muslim majority countries you've never been to. And if
Mm-hmm.
you don't have time for that, then let's go visit their ambassadors
Mm-hmm.
here in New York. But you need to recognize that you are out of step with where the Muslim world, so that I chose to push back with him, not from a Jewish perspective, but from a Muslim, from an Islamic perspective. And I made it very clear
What was
that
his reaction to that?
as Marc Schneier, I will never support the bifurcation of Israel from Judaism, or breaking out anti-Zionism from anti-Semitism. For me, it is clear, it is unequivocal, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
What
And
was
the
his reaction, Rabbi?
demonization of Israel, and the use of anti-Semitic tropes like apartheid, occupation, genocide, that will only lead to physical attacks on Jews. And I must tell you, he listened attentively. I don't believe anyone has ever spoken to him in this manner. Again, coming from an Islamic perspective, not from a Jewish perspective. And he said, look, Rabbi, you have my cell. Let's continue the conversation. Because I told the mayor-elect how I would relish the opportunity to expand his horizons, to enlarge his interests. There's no question. He is a product of his father's anti-Israel rhetoric, diatribe, hatred, that anti-Israel, anti-Zionist ideology. And we need to counter that by reminding the Mamdanis of the world that they are out of step, not only with the Jewish world, but with the Muslim world as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that conversation between you and him. And I think he's in. I mean, the initial thinking was that we at Jewish community in New York are in for quite a ride, but I think he's in for quite a ride also, quite an education
I
coming up.
reminded him, Larry, that he was on his way to see President Trump. And the very countries that I cited as models of support for Israel, those are the countries that President Trump brought into the Abraham Accords, or those are the countries that President Trump is trying to expand the Abraham Accords with. Now, the second part of our conversation, I used a little basketball term. I said to the mayor-elect, I have an easy layup for you.
Yeah.
When you become mayor, why don't you support legislation? You introduce legislation that would prohibit any form of protest or demonstration in front of a house of worship in New York, be it the synagogue, a mosque, a church. I reminded the mayor-elect that I've been a Manhattan and Upper East Side resident my whole life. And every September, during the week of the United Nations General Assembly, whenever any world leader, it could be Erdogan, it could be Putin, it could be Netanyahu, it could be Abbas, you name it, they're staying at the Regency of the St. Regis, at the Waldorf, at the Park Lane, at the Carlisle. Never, but never is a counter protest allowed in front of that hotel, in front of that building, and the same should be seen and should be committed when it comes to houses of worship. And he said, Rabbi Schneier, I love that idea. I just love that idea. Let's be in contact and let's see if we can work on that together.
But he's got a tough. He's got a real leftist city council also that he's going to be working with. And when it comes to Albany, he's got a leftist assembly and state
But
senate as
Larry, it's
well.
not about synagogues. It's about anti-abortion protests
But
in front of churches.
obviously your conversation with him was very hard hitting, and I'm sure it made an impression on him. But at the same time, it didn't stop him. An hour or two later, when he was standing next to President Trump, he also fell out of him about the
But if
genocide.
you read the account of my conversation in the New York Times,
Which I did yesterday.
that this time, he qualified his condemnation where he said he attacked the demonstrators for their conduct, and then he said, full stop after that. So you know what, Larry? I'll take a little credit for him qualifying his condemnation.
So, I mean, like you're a resident of the city, your father's shul's in the city. Uh, there's a sense that people in the five boroughs and the Jewish communities are concerned. But what's the worst that could possibly happen under? Why does it matter that whether I just heard Kathy Hochul say yesterday at a turkey giveaway that she's a good Catholic schoolgirl and she uses the things that she taught in Catholic school. It never makes a difference to anybody whether she's Catholic or Protestant or anything else. I mean, what do you anticipate knowing what you know and having observed what you have observed these last few weeks? What's the worst that could possibly happen? Because the man who was elected mayor happens to be a Muslim.
Look, it's not the fact that he was elected and that he's a Muslim. This isn't an interreligious conflict. No, I think it's more of an interpolitical conflict. The fact that he happens to be a member of the Muslim community, who's out of touch with the Muslim world, who does not support the Democrat Jewish state of Israel. That's the issue. So what's the worst that can happen? It can become very uncomfortable for Jews in New York. You know, listen, he doesn't have,
How?
he does, for example, he can't arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu, but once the Prime Minister arrives in New York, and then there's a whole media parade about, why aren't you arresting the Prime Minister, then that's
Yeah.
only going to lead to all of these attacks. That's only going to lead to all of this unnecessary chatter. The same thing with the Israel Day Parade on Fifth Avenue. Why isn't the mayor there? Oh, the mayor isn't there because he doesn't support the genocidal, occupational, apartheid-like government of the state of Israel. So that is only going to make the climate, the environment for Jewish New Yorkers very uncomfortable. And why the night that he was elected mayor, and I was with, my dear friend Andrew Cuomo, the next morning I announced I am building a day school, the first Jewish day school in the Hamptons, will open September 2027 in anticipation of the hundreds, if not thousands, of Jewish families that I anticipate will leave New York to move to the Hamptons and to greater Suffolk County.
So, for example, he cites international law, the ICC law. I mean, what's the relationship between the mayor of a municipality like New York City and the international court in the Hague, I guess it
Zoran
is.
Mamdani has finessed every issue, whether it's free rent, free groceries, whether it's his opposition to law enforcement, police. The only issue of, as he would say, of being free that he hasn't financed is free Palestine. And this is a man who is preoccupied. He sees Israel as a paradigm of human rights violations. And this is of great concern. And not only that, I know what is the game plan here and the slippery slope, not only of Mamdani, but even some of the more radical Jews that support him. They are trying to break out Israel from the Jewish religion, from the Jewish community. They're looking to bifurcate Israel and the New York Jewish community. But we're too smart for that. We're not going to allow that. We must remain vigilant. Israel, I have literally, for the last 20 years, I have met with practically every leader in the Persian Gulf, in Muslim majority countries, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, President Erdogan of Turkey, you name it, where I've made it very, very clear that Israel is not a 77-year political issue for the Jewish people. It is at the core of our religion. It is at the core of our Jewish identity. It has been at the core of Judaism for thousands of years. There is no such thing as being anti-Zionist and not being anti-Semitic. You're an anti-Zionist, you're an anti-Semite, end of story.
So, we read about the fire commissioner, Robert Tucker, resigning as soon as Mamdani won, also over religious issues that he was uncomfortable with. But Jessica Tisch, who I'm sure you know, is hanging in there. She did a great job as police commissioner under Mayor Adams. And she can do the same if he will allow her going forward. How do you foresee that playing out over the next few months?
She's hanging in there for now.
You don't
And
have a
I
good.
emphasize for now, what is going to happen if she is instructed to go arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu? What is such a distinguished member of the distinguished Tish family, what is she going to do? And again, we all know that he cannot do anything. Nevertheless, the fact that this is being brought up, the fact that this issue is being brought to the fore will make things very, very uncomfortable for the New York Jewish community, and who needs to feel that discomfort, and why I think many Jews will choose to leave New York City. Now, I must tell you, and I said that to my friend Andrew Cuomo that early morning after he lost. I said, Andrew, Moses could have run for mayor. It is a different city. It's a different reality. New York City has changed demographically. And Larry, we must appreciate that in politics, there is a tradition of ethnic allegiance and ethnic identification. And the Jewish community of New York City simply does not have the voting bloc nor the voting population we used to have. It's a different reality. And we're going to have to be very, very creative in creating new intergroup alliances and new interfaith cooperation in the city of New York.
I mean, like, what does it mean? Just a couple of minutes to go, but what does it mean that 20% of the Jews in Manhattan, for example, or in the five boroughs voted for Mamdani?
No, shame on us. I think that we have failed miserably in sensitizing and educating, particularly younger Jews, that Israel is at the very center of our identity. It's only because of Israel, the great Jewish state, that has restored the honor and the dignity of the Jewish people. And we have such a crisis of Jewish assimilation. I often speak of the growing distance between the people of the book and the books of our people, and how ignorance leads to indifference. Indifference leads to a loss of Jewish identity, and we must re-intensify our efforts in strengthening Jewish identity, particularly among young Jews in our city and in our country.
So the plan to build a day school in West Hampton is in anticipation of what you think is going to be an exodus from the five boroughs of,
I'm not suggest first it's West Hampton Beach, not West Hampton. I'm not suggesting a mass exodus,
yeah.
but I can tell you when I announced that in the New York Times, the morning after the election, the
Hmm.
synagogues phones were ringing off the hook. How do we register? Where do we register? How does one qualify to be a part of the school? Yes, but Marc Schneier's philosophy. Every obstacle is an opportunity. And I have an opportunity to take a Jewish community that is off the charts for 6 months of the year, even though we're open year round, but I often
Right.
define the Hamptons Synagogue, to paraphrase Dickens, as a tale of two seasons. I have an opportunity to now transform West Hampton Beach into one of the most dynamic year-round Jewish communities. And you better believe it, my friend, I will take advantage of this opportunity.
Yeah, you got an Arif and everything to go with it. So you
Oh,
guys are
we
ready.
are we are opening our new mikvah, the most magnificent mikvah, in 3 weeks.
That's
In three
fantastic.
weeks,
You're
we
doing an
have an
extraordinary.
infrastructure. And living in West Hampton Beach, living in the Hamptons is like living in Disneyland. It's not even real. It's a very, very privileged way of life. And we are looking forward to welcoming so many young Jewish families. Welcome to the Disneyland of the Hamptons that will
All right,
become
God willing.
the great Jewish Disneyland of the Hamptons.
Okay, as you always say, nothing ordinary, it's extraordinary,
We
or something
make
like
the
that.
ordinary extraordinary. We are
Extraordinary. Right.
simply the Hamptons Synagogue. We are simply the best at what we do, and why we're also so thrilled to have this partnership with the Five Towns Jewish Times, that we have so many of your readers that come from far and wide to participate,
Okay.
to partake in our activities.
I'm going to put that in my next commercial, if you don't mind, online. But I do appreciate you taking so much time to fill us in on important news that I think is underreported, and people are more ignorant about what could possibly happen than anything else. And I think you may end up being a big paper tiger, like President Trump feels. But that remains to be seen. Let's see what happens after January 1st. Rabbi Marc Schneier, thank you very much for your time and
Thank
your
you, Larry.
insights.